We are.
Just realized it was Showtime in the unwashed. I mean, these wonderful people out in our chat are probably,
getting angsty.
Getting all angsty about it.
I was getting angsty. I was giving you the stink eye, Jim. You just weren't picking up on it, as usual.
We're not married.
We
should be, because I still ignore her stink eye as much as I ignore yours. So, there was that one time at Huntsville that first year. Good morning, people. How are you? How's everybody? Chuck, what's going on? How are you? T.O., Ape?
Doing good. Early here.
What's going on, fellas? Anything interesting coming up?
I mean,
you froze, and now you unfroze. Yeah. Try it again.
Well, it's probably just because I'm moving slow. I probably didn't freeze it, but I made a cable today.
Too many Miller Lights last night.
Yeah, and with any luck, this cable turns to a cloud of smoke and sparks tomorrow.
I want to see it on camera.
Where we do our testing of boost and buck converters.
It's going to be live. So there's live.
Well, when I went to make the cable, I was like, should I get, and I was grabbing my good wire. Then I decided, nope. So this is just the cheap 18-gauge speaker wire.
I mean, it looks safe.
Sure. Yeah, it'll be fine.
18 gauge.
Sure. Is that the Nebraska version of it'd be all right?
Yeah.
That's the Alabama version. It's similar to Hold My Beer.
So we're going to use this to put the load on the
nice.
Thing, so we'll see what happens.
I like that much better than the CBA, because it's about, what, a 30-second the cost?
Yeah.
I think this is about $50.
Yeah, I've got a DC load.
Oh, yeah, I got that one.
I have the Maker Hawk too, but I bought a DC load that goes up to I think it'll do about 40 amps total, but that's dependent on the voltage. It's about 440 watts maximum that it can load. So it depends on your voltage and your current.
I can't even remember what this thing has. I thought I was buying a DC load one night, but I ended up buying what is this thing?
The G90?
I remember that.
And it is the GPC 3020, if anybody wants to look it up. But it's a linear power supply. I don't know how I made that mistake.
That's the complete opposite of a load, yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you something real quick, Abe. When you put those crimps on the end of that, did you give them a tug and say they ain't going nowhere?
I did give them a little tug, and I wasn't so sure that they ain't going anywhere. So let's get me on the big screen. And
he didn't say that. He didn't say that. Oh, if you don't say the words.
I soldered it. Can you see it?
Oh, yeah.
See, now they're going to flex and crack, and your airplane's going to fall out of the sky.
Well, like I was thinking about the debate. Like, I prefer crimp than solder. And I was thinking about Chuck. And, as I was soldering, I was thinking about all the pompous dipshit hams that go on a tirade about when you're soldering, you need to make sure that your solder is a 4029. You know what I mean? They go into all of that and how clean the tip needs to be, and then they
Son, you got to have a clean tip. I'm just going to say.
Or then you get the same thing about the crimpers, man. It's no different.
I'm not saying you. And they lecture everybody. My solder is impeccable, and they go on this whole thing, and they're like, I'm making a cable. This cable will last me 70 years. I don't care. I could guess what happened. I'm hoping that the cable fails.
I got to say, I agree with Abe, and it's funny that he's on a rant already this morning. Amen.
Already.
And I'm a complete rogue because I crimp and then usually run solder into it too, because more is.
It's almost like it was designed for it.
I worked on
Brian.
I worked on fire engines.
Yeah.
I worked on fire engines, guys, and crimping does not last.
We've put
on
it up.
fire
We didn't
engines on
talk
bad
about it.
roads.
Brian Hendricks has been a member for 20
Thanks,
months.
Brian.
Brian, thank you.
I believe you. Thank you, Brian. I believe you 1,000 times, Chuck. I mean, 100% respect your opinion in every aspect on that.
You have
These
to watch.
will likely melt tomorrow, and then I will lose them if they don't. And I could care. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like
they may be soldered tomorrow, right?
Yeah, they may be welded tomorrow.
Welded.
Yeah.
We're going to watch Abe spot weld the end of his wires.
I take metal and I make fire.
T.O. alluded to this. That's right, Rick. T.O. alluded to this a second ago, and I don't know if y'all caught it. But if you don't tug on it and say that'll hold, it's going to come apart. It's like when you strap down
asking
a load.
for trouble.
You strap down a load in the back of your truck or your trailer, and you strapped it down yourself. You've got to grab them straps and go, she ain't going nowhere. Because if you don't say that lawnmower's rolling right off that trailer.
You just have to be careful not to put too much solder where it goes down inside the wire, because then it could break there, right?
I
That's the
like
problem
to
with
feed
solder.
that solder in though.
So Jamscan is saying
Well,
a proper
you can
crimp
put
takes
quite a
3
few.
seconds. It does, but look at how much argument we've gotten out of it so far. We're 5 minutes in
That's
here
right.
now.
5 minutes.
I'm right. We could probably do
6.
45
We
minutes
just
on
turned
this,
6.
like that other show.
Well, this is a
Love you guys.
good
You know who
crimp
I'm
on these.
talking
I felt
about.
that it was okay, but I just put some solder on there just in case.
Did you use the official insulated crimp part or the non-insulated crimp part?
I used the officialated crimp part.
Officialated? That's good.
Yeah, and I used these crimpers.
That's the ones. Those are the ones.
Well, see, you know it was easy with those crimpers.
Yeah, I mean,
see
if
what I
you
did
want to,
there?
you got to use vice grips if you really want a good crimp. Just
The no easy crimpers.
how
You know,
many
a
of
lot
them
of making
crimp
fun
with
of people.
pliers?
I
Before.
love when somebody's like, I can do power pole crimps just fine with needle nose pliers. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, awesome. And then they always come back and be like, yeah, it didn't work out so well. I mean, I must have known 10, 15 people to say that.
There's something there I want to say, and I can't say it because it's not Thursday night.
Uh-oh.
What, pimping ain't easy? Now,
These aren't
Hollywood is
cheap ones.
dispensing some.
But these
some
things
wisdom,
crimp
too.
pretty dang good. have to
Yeah, I love
say.
those crimpers. Those
These
are
are
my favorite kind.
GB. I forget what GB stands for. They're kind of old, but you can buy
Great
this.
Bear or something like that.
You can buy
Gray
those
bar.
that style at Harbor Freight too, and they actually
For like
I have a pair of those.
$9
They actually work good.
Yeah.
The
pretty
ones that I
cheap.
got. And Mr.
What's
Mudd,
nice
the
about
show-
those, they fit into tight spots better than the ratcheting ones. If you have to get into a tight spot, say like on antenna winder or something,
well, they're light, right? The
Garter
ones that you
bender.
have if you
There it
hold them
is.
back up. Mine
Hold
actually
them back
Yeah.
up, Chuck.
hold them back up.
Mine actually have
chop.
strippers on them, like in the handle
these
part.
don't.
These don't. But you can use them as pliers. You can use them as strippers, and you can use them as crimpers. They're
But
like
if
the
you
best
look
tool
at-
ever.
If you look
you
at
got
it, it's
it.
got a real wide crimp. See how wide it is? It's all the way
Yeah.
across.
Look at
Got
them
that
steely
curve.
eyes.
It would be kind of cool if they did a T, going both directions. Maybe I'll invent
But
that.
I like those crimpers.
And Mr. Mudd with glue, crimp, solder, and glue heat shrink.
Well, tomorrow's show,
Oh, that's my deal, actually.
after
Yeah.
we had Mr. Mudd on, Jim and I got all excited and bought those.
Buck converters, boost converters.
Yeah, these whatever they are that he had on our show. And we're like,
I forgot what we even bought. I mean, I know it's some kind of electrical dingus. I'm like,
Jim's
Oh,
like,
I
that,
saw-
that looks pretty.
where? I know it was. I bought it on a stream. I think.
well, we were
Or-
like, these are like $9.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
they're
mean, it's-
cheap.
Got every penny's worth out of that.
Right.
Yeah, so tomorrow I'll be live with the Primate on his channel. I think he's already got it posted out there for you guys.
is.
So
It is.
we are going to possibly electrocute ourselves or release the plasma. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway. T.O., you've been fairly quiet. What's going on with you? How are you? Where
It
are you
is
located
hot
this
here.
week?
I'm in Roswell, New Mexico, with all the aliens. And if you go, I'm going to put a video out on it. But if you go to the Roswell UFO Museum, you'll just see yep. Anytime the government reassures you over and over and over and over and over again that something didn't happen, it happened.
It happened.
And that's
Right.
that's not a conspiracy theory. Like the harder you try to tell me you didn't do something, I know you did.
Right. I'm with you. I'm with you. I could pontificate on that kind of conspiracy stuff for quite a while. There's proof. We're not alone.
Yeah.
We're
Well,
not
I mean,
alone.
yeah.
it would be awful pompous to think that we are the only life forms in the entire whatever's out there, right?
Exactly
It's
right.
actually better if you think that we're just dumb enough that the rest of the aliens in the universe don't want to visit us anymore.
Dude, they
that's,
ride
that's
by
more
and they
plausible.
lock their car doors and say, "Don't look out the window. Don't make eye
Yeah.
contact with them. They'll
Well, we
hump your
would
legs."
have to have some sort of natural resource that they would need in order to compel them to come down
well,
here.
people.
Because I can't imagine that we offer anything unique to people who beat the space-time continuum.
Right.
Look at you. I'm so proud of you.
Big
what
words.
What would we offer?
Well, there's
You know
that
what
whole
I'm saying?
story about the gold, and then they just killed themselves over it. So they kind of solved our problem for us.
Right.
Right.
Well, I
It
mean,
doesn't make any sense.
I think it's the Fermi paradox, and I can't remember all of it, but basically, anybody who comes here is going to be so much more advanced than we are. They're going to just wipe us out like we squash an ant, something like that.
I saw V.
There's more. Yes, V, and there's a sci-fi story, and I can't remember who wrote it, about helpful aliens who come to Earth, and they have this book they all carry around. And one of the humans finally translated it, and it was a cookbook as people are loading on the ship to go visit their home world.
Nice.
Yeah.
We're food.
The guy's running up to his buddy who's on the ramp boarding the ship, waving the book because he's just finally deciphered it. And he's yelling at his buddy like the last line of the story, "It's a cookbook!" Well, that's awkward.
Well,
It's
I mean,
people.
I can't imagine that they would fly all this way just to eat humans either. You know what I mean? Like,
We ain't that tasty.
no, I can't
No.
imagine.
We're meaty, though. Just saying, some of us.
But with all the chemicals and all the poisons and antibiotics, you know what I mean? Like, I just
Oh, they're not
can't
eating Americans. No.
Right.
imagine. I just can't imagine. It would be
Right.
something that they would want to do.
I don't know. And some of them other guys are so skinny, they may not want them either. So, yeah, the food
That's why I'm
choices
safe.
here. It's like a cheap buffet.
Take
got
Jim. There's
got the
nothing here.
fatty-
Take Jim.
You got the
Well, like,
fatty
what if
stuff
they-
and you got the
And we are
undernourished
we are
stuff.
officially Clubhouse now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, well, we have a guest in the back room waiting too.
Right. All right.
Mr.
We're taking
Code.
some,
Mr.
we're
Code's
taking
in the
some
back.
drama. We're taking some drama. I will say one last thing on this, and we're going to move on. The ancient Egyptians did not build them damn pyramids by themselves, not the ones at Giza. Some of the other 10 pyramids in Egypt are obviously built by humans because they look like recycled hamster turds.
Right.
Look it up. It's a thing. Ain't no way.
Hamster turds.
Well,
Not
it was
6,000
the
years ago.
Anunnaki. The Anunnaki helped build those. Everybody
Right.
knows that.
Right.
That was the alien gold plate I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Right.
All right. Chip chop. So today we're going to talk
Chip
about
chop.
code plugs. I learned that from Ape. DMR code plugs, because we've all gotten comments on our channels. Well, not Chuck, but because he
I
doesn't
have,
do
but
DMR.
I don't answer those.
Oh, well, not good comments about code plugs. And everybody says, code plugs they're witchcraft, they're mysterious, they're dark magic, all that stuff. And they are a little more complicated than programming a fusion radio. And I think a little more complicated than programming a D-star radio once you understand the weird D-star paradigm, but the code plug for it's not that complicated. The DMR code plug is a little involved, but it's not as bad as you think if you follow some basic steps, some building blocks. And T.O. did a great video on this a year or so ago, I don't remember, with index cards and his
Actual
audio-
paper cards to
Paper
drive that
card.
metaphor home. Yeah.
And I was like, son, that is genius. But and he was spot on with it. It was a great explanation of how to build code plugs. So we're going to look at. I got three or four slides, not a lot.
Grouse slides.
Only three.
So
or
I
four.
took the index cards and I put them inside of envelopes, and I put the envelopes inside of an accordion file. So it's like contacts inside of groups inside of, and I forget the terminology because I don't do it every day, and that's another
Yeah.
part about how difficult this is. It's like, and it's really bad when you're trying to help somebody. Like, I don't remember what talk group means versus zone versus channel versus. Like I get
Right.
the private versus public and contact versus group thing, but like then we start adding layers on top of layers, and it's like, we have a file cabinet full of file cabinets. Why did we do that?
Right. So Doc Brad, thank you for the $1.99 super chat. Coffee House.
I had another one too, right?
Thank you, Doc Brad. And there's one more thing that gets really weird about DMR. DMR was meant for business, and God bless hams for all the hard work they did to convert this over into ham radio use and have fun with it. Thank you, Phil. And
Phil, appreciate it.
what has happened though is that now that we're hams, this is something that never happened in business, as far as I can tell. There was never a situation where your company also had a completely different company across the street with a completely different name and a completely different purpose. And so what I'm talking about is TGIF versus Brandmeister. Now you also have your own local hotspot. So, and you have your club's repeater. So there's like four different companies, four different organizations that you're trying to serve with one radio, with one code plug, all to talk to the exact same people, just in, different avenues to get there. And that's like hams have taken something that was already complicated and then extra complicated it.
I think the worst part or the most complicated part about the DMR stuff is all the cheap Chinese radios that have different code plug software. They use different language and they have different requirements for programming. In and of itself, the concept behind DMR to me seems strikingly simple. And maybe it's just me and the way I think or whatever, but there's nothing complicated about it until you start. Every radio that you pick up's different. Some you can't program from the front panel interface. Some have admittance criteria, some don't. Some have TX groups that you have to put people in, some don't. And that makes it impossible.
It
But
does.
outside of that, if you get a good DMR radio, they're pretty dang simple. As a matter of fact, the Anytones are easiest HTs to program out of any HT I've ever held in my life, regardless if I'm doing it for analog or digital.
Yep.
I just wish some of the other ones could make it that easy.
And when he says Anytone, the BTEC,
yeah,
the
for sure,
BTECs are also Anytones.
6 plus 6 or something.
It's 6x2. I have the 6X2, the original 6X2. I feel no need to buy another one. The only reason I would upgrade that radio is to get 300,000 digital contacts in it, and I don't like 299,000.
When was the last time you talked
75
to
of you people, right?
But when was the last time you talked on DMR?
And that's the other reason.
So I used to use it every day, and it's probably been 3 years since I've even turned on the DMR radio. I mean,
And those people have never called you any other way to reach out to see if you're okay. There's never been a wellness check. Where's Ape?
Right.
Bastard.
Is he still alive?
That's how you know they're good friends.
So let's pop up some slides, and I will read these to you line by line quickly.
Oh, great.
So the first thing I want to say is a code plug is not special. It's just a configuration file. Motorola invented that terminology. It's a config file. All you're doing is telling the radio frequencies and channels and stuff like that. That's all it is. There's nothing mysterious about the word code plug, and it actually, to me, is stupid. Why wouldn't you just not call it a config? Whatever. All right, that's the nerdnik in me going on. So then you have CPS software, which is customer programming software, configuration programming software, twice.
Code plug software.
Code plug software, sure. There you go. And when you talk about the software to program a radio, we all call it CPS. Whether it's an analog radio or a digital radio, we all call it CPS. It's the software to program the radio. And what Ape was just talking about, it varies from vendor to vendor. And this is with DMR radios, this is with analog radios, this is with ICOMs, this is with Yaesus, it's with all of them. The software all looks a little different, but it's basically the same general format. The implementation is a little weird in some places, but it's the same basic things. Now, the names are not going to be exactly the same a lot, especially in the Chinese DMR software. And I'm not hating on China. I've seen about 27 different versions of Chinese DMR software, and 26 and a half of them don't look like the others. So,
well, part of the problem, and I'm going to get back on the soapbox real quick,
oh Lord,
is that you have these companies that come out and are like, oh, we're innovating. We're releasing a new DMR radio that's going to change the world. Look at us. We're a premier radio manufacturer. And they're relicensing a 15-year-old DMR radio.
Yep.
There's absolutely nothing new about it. It's antiquated if you compare it to the stuff like the Anytones because it's so old. It's just ridiculous. All right, I'm done.
yep, and he's right. And the same thing with the radio bodies too. That's a whole nother show probably. But so the quality varies a lot on these. The BTEC software is, as far as I'm concerned, the gold standard of DMR programming software. There's probably better. There's certainly worse. And a lot of these radios, you can get third-party CPS for them. So Chirp will program a fair amount of radios, and Chirp is always updating. Chirp is free, so it's worth a look to see if Chirp will program your radio. If you're looking at buying one, go to Chirp's webpage, take a look at the supported radios on there before you buy a radio, if you don't want to mess with crappy CPS.
Does Chirp support any DMR radios, though?
They do. I can't tell you which ones off the top of my head. I think they support the 6X2 now. I'm not sure. But they do support a ton of radios, yes, and a lot of the Chinese radios. Absolutely.
Yeah, because I know that for a long time they were saying that they were not going to.
I could be wrong.
the
I have
DMRs.
never looked at Chirp for programming a DMR radio because the 6X2 software's fine. I just haven't, but I think they do. And again, they're free, so download it, and if it doesn't work, then you're out nothing. Yeah, I'm not sure. And then if you want another
Crispy
solution,
too.
you can get software from RT Systems. And they do program DMR radios. The software is going to cost you $25. And depending on the radio, you may or may not have to buy their proprietary cable. Generally, if the radio programs via USB, you don't need a cable from RT Systems. If it doesn't, you're probably going to end up getting have to get the proprietary cable. So you're into RT for about $50.
You know, and
So-
they're decent people over at RT Systems, and $25 isn't a whole lot to spend. I know the
No.
hams like to pride themselves on being cheap,
Cheap bastards.
but
Like you'll see.
you know, here's
Are you
the
triggered, T.O.?
I am feisty this morning.
No,
Here's
no, I
the
just feel
thing.
seen.
People are like, "Well, I can donate to Chirp if I want," but you know you don't. You know you don't. And
Sing it, brother Ape.
right? It ain't going to
Preach.
kill somebody to help somebody who's advancing the hobby. Is all I'm saying.
See, Jim, triggered is when someone calls you out and you feel embarrassed by it. Y'all just called me out for being cheap, and I am proud of it.
You're owning that. You're owning that.
Yeah,
That's
I am
right.
cheap.
But I've seen you spend money though. That's the you don't have the every piece of software that I use shall be free. Everything, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
everybody's got to do everything for me because I'm a ham. Like you don't have that mentality.
We've had RT Systems on the show.
Right, great people.
Yeah,
Yeah, and they were really nice. They're located in Georgia.
we should have
Like
them
I s-
back.
The software is
should.
$25. Doesn't matter which one you buy. It's a perpetual license for however many computers you feel the need to load it on. It's a great deal. And if you have to buy the cable, you got to buy the cable. That's another $25, $50, and you've got decent software. And the beauty of RT Systems, they update the software on a regular basis. Absolutely. And it self-checks when you turn it on. Do I need to update? Yes, I have new updates. So that's continuing process. Even for software for old radios, I still see stuff getting updated. The interface is consistent. So, I mean, other than some specific things like D-Star weirdness or DMR weirdness, the interface looks the same for a FT5D that it does for a D75, that it does for a 6X2. And again, they have a supported list on their website of all the radios they support, so that may be an option you want to consider. And I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying it's an option. Godspeed.
Well, our buddy Liberty Cave over here saying he wants to know if RT runs on Linux.
No,
And what I'm going to tell you, son, is that everything can run on Linux if you're good enough.
right.
Oh, I felt that one. Ow!
don't-
It was cold here this morning too.
RT runs on Mac, which indicates that it runs on BSD Unix. So there's that for you hardcore Unix people. I ain't never going to use Windows. The way of the world, son. Embrace it. All right.
Even Windows runs on Linux.
Right. So code plugs. Code plugs, I don't think code plugs are hard, and I'm going to go with Ape on this. Maybe it's just the way I think. But once I looked at the software the first time I programmed a DMR radio, and I was like, oh my God. And then I started figuring out how everything interlocked. And at the end of the day, there's some basic blocks that you're going to do, some in order, and some of them when you get around to it. So in all the Chinese CPS software, in all CPS software for DMR radios, and I'm going to talk specific DMR stuff now. Excuse me. You've got the non-DMR stuff. So do you want the radio to show a picture when it boots up? Do you want it to show your name? You know, what are the hot buttons going to do? What are some of the menu options that you may or may not want enabled? As hams, we're not typically going to use the emergency button on top, the duress button as a man down thing. So you can probably reprogram it from man down to, you know, zone change or something. And we'll talk about that in a second. But all the general programming that is the same on an analog radio as a digital radio, all that crap, that's the same in every piece of software you're ever going to see for that radio. So
People say things like, you know, it's the lexicon that you use in DMR that hams find so confusing, like this color code, this talk group. That's the easy part. The hard part is all the crap in the general settings that's radio specific. Like that's the stuff that gets everybody all turned around.
I love that boy. That's exact. Thank you. I could skip that slide now, son. Very good. That's exactly right. Because you got to figure out what some of that stuff is, because it is very radio specific. Yep. Excellent point, Ape. So the DMR specific stuff. And I've got CPS software set up. We can share if we want to later, but I'm going to kind of go through this and talk to it a little bit. These are the basic things that you have to set up a DMR radio. And I've seen it out there on the internet. I don't remember where, but there are worksheets for setting up a DMR radio. And if that's a tool that will help you, then you should try that. Or hell, just a piece of paper. These are the things right here that you got to do to get your DMR radio functioning. And if you do them in this order, like I've got on the screen, everything will work when you're done. If you don't do them in this order, you're going to get yourself confused and out of sync, and it's going to be a problem. The other thing that I would say, and this is my personal opinion and does not reflect the opinion of my employers or anyone else on this channel, don't get someone else's code plug from Texas or Minnesota or Iowa and try and make it work for you in California, because you're going to make yourself crazy. Don't do that. You're not going to understand the way they built the code plug. And at the end of the day, for you to effectively use this radio and enjoy using it, you need to build the code plug so you understand how you laid it out.
Well, what happens when you need to do something on it and change it, right?
Right. Then you don't know what to change. Exactly.
So DMR radios, and they're not the only ones, FM analog radios do this as well, have a kill or stun feature that can be used in the event that the radio is lost or stolen. You can basically brick it. And you definitely don't want to be using somebody's DMR code plug that has that activated, because you don't want people to have the ability to do that to you.
To stun your radio, exactly.
And what's interesting about that is that I believe it was ICOM years ago was saying that their digital mode wasn't susceptible to remote kill or remote stun. And it's because they say they don't have that feature. Now, if they do or not, I don't know. But it's certainly easy enough to disable.
Right. And the same thing with the duress button. That orange button on top, and I don't have my DMR radio handy. I should have grabbed it. The duress button, the orange button on top, is a feature for public safety, generally for business radios, whatever, public utility people. And that's a man down thing. And you'll see it called man down usually, or emergency, something like that. The fire department, we called it the duress button. And what that's going to do, depending on how the radio is programmed, is it's going to open a channel, again, whatever you have it programmed to, and it's going to start squawking that Ted has fallen and can't get up or whatever. And it's going to tie up the channel until someone turns that button off. So that's a feature you should disable right away. You do not want man down on your radio and you're broadcasting the duress call over America Link or something goofy like that.
Well, that's what people hated the Balfangs for so long, is because everybody was hitting that orange button on the Balfangs and then putting a siren out on
on the air. Right. So the first thing you got to do is get you a DMR ID. They're free. Go to radioid.net and sign up. It's a 7-digit number. And they tie it to your license so they can put you in the contact database. So that is how your DMR radio knows who you are. The Yaesus, for example, on Fusion, you use a call sign. D-Star is call sign and convoluted registration setup, but it's the same kind of deal. DMR, they just tie your call sign to that DMR ID, and you use that for a lot of other things down the road, hotspots and other digital modes as well. So once you have that, the first thing you got to program in your radio in the CPS software is tell the radio, this is me, I am this digital ID. And I've got my screen here, and I hope y'all can see this well enough.
Let me get my glasses.
Got to find the right window. I even made it only 1080 so you could see it, Ape. You may let's just plus that up all the way while I'm looking at this thing. So
there you go.
In this software, this is the basic information stuff, and then you get into a lot of, here's analog specifics, here's digital specifics, This is your channel list, your zone list, so on and so forth. So as you go through all this, you have to find in your CPS software the first thing. And on the DMR 6X2 software, this is radio ID, and it's under digital because the only reason you need that ID is for digital contacts. So this is where you put in your DMR ID, and you're going to put in, and you can call the radio whatever you want, but this has to be your DMR ID. The software lets you put in multiples, at least this software does. So if I want to use the Toads talk group or the Toads DMR ID, I could, if I'm doing a DMR POTA or something weird. And I could use apes or whatever, but you shouldn't do that because kittens will die if you do that.
Or if you're one of those hams that forces your wife to get an ID and all that stuff. And
Right.
And then you could program hers in there as well.
Yes, you could share one radio. That's correct. So that's the first thing you got to do is put in that DMR ID. All right. And then the next thing you got to add is digital contacts and talk groups. Now, when I say digital contacts, let me pop back over to that one. When I say digital contacts, yeah, this CPS doesn't have anything loaded, but I could put in TO's contact information here. I could make it a private call, his DMR ID, and then I could save this. And then when I want to talk to TO, I could scroll to TO and move on. If you have talk groups you want to put in, they go in the talk groups. And if we go back and look at our slides, we talked about digital contacts. That's generally one-on-ones, apes, TOs, Chuck's DMR ID, so on and so forth. Talk groups are what D-Star calls reflectors and what Yesu calls rooms. It's a talk group. They're all three talk groups. Talk group's a better word. So here is where I would put in a contact. This is the Toads talk group. It's a talk group. It's a group call, and it's 319-2083. I had to think a second to remember it.
Well,
and now
there's a difference between contacts and digital contacts, though, correct?
Not in this software. These are
in that software.
Well, that would be a channel. That's not going to be a contact. When we talk about contacts in here, it's digital contacts.
Pull that software back up, because the thing is that you can import the digital contact ID database, which is the 300,000 duplicate IDs where people have 10 or so each.
Yeah, that's this right here.
But then you also have contacts,
which is
somewhere.
Oh yeah, you could do
well, that's analog.
Yeah, and kind of weird. What you're talking about would be here. If we had, I mean, that's just like repeaters and hotspots. There's no analog contacts in here, dude.
There is.
How would you have an analog contact? I would have to hit you directly.
No, I'm not talking about analog contact. I'm talking about digital contacts and regular contacts.
What's a regular contact?
I'm trying to, like I said, it's been 3 here.
Well, so in this software, you have digital contacts, which is where I would put in TO, and I don't remember TO's ID, and it's going to be a private call, so I'm going to make up a number here. I'm going to use Toads 319-2083. That is TO's DMR ID. I don't want to be alerted when he calls, and if I loaded the database, I would already have this information. And I could put in a city somewhere in New Mexico and any other information, and then it's saved. Now, that is a digital contact. That's the only kind of contact for a person you can put in here.
See, when I would add contacts in on mine manually, but I also had the same person in my import from the digital contact list.
You can have, I know what you're talking about. You're talking about like a friends list. That's what you're talking about. And this is a smaller list, and then you can use that group differently, yes, with your friends. So I would put you and Tio in the friends list, for example.
And it's a different record too, right?
It is a different record. And this does a database lookup, and I haven't loaded the database in here, so I can't do it, but I could pull up, if I didn't know Tio's DMR ID, for example, and I had loaded the contact database, I could come in here and I could put in KM9G right here. You're not seeing my screen because these damn windows don't pop up.
Because you're just sharing the window, not the screen.
Yep. Let me kill that and redo that. It would make more sense if you could see it. I didn't realize that. There's screen,
No wonder.
entire screen, that screen. Okay. So yeah, the friends list, that's showing up now. The friends list I can look up by DMR ID, by name, or by call sign. So I could put in KM9G, it would pull it out of the database, and I could add him to my friends list.
Yeah, and
But
then go
it's-
open the channel, will you?
But it's still, but it's still a digital contact. And I could still talk to him by putting him in my digital contact list. This is the database. You don't have to download this database. You can just use this as your friends list. If I only ever put 3 IDs in here, Ape, Chuck, and TO, I'm done. All the friends list is a small version of this database. This
Let's go over and
database
take
is
a
the
look
big
at
one.
that channel.
At the channels, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're
And then
breaking the slides.
open one of the. Oh, that's all. Open one of the digital ones up, like number 2. Now, see, there's a contact thing under digital right there, right?
Can I make this bigger somehow? I guess I can't. Nope. Go away. Now, where are you talking about?
So under digital, there's a contact. Is there? What
So
happens?
that is-
What is that?
That is a digital contact that I see where you're confused. That is a
Well,
talk
hold
group.
on. Ain't nobody confused.
That's a talk group. That's a talk group. This is the
can't
verbiage
read it.
they use. That's a talk group. It could also be TO specifically on his own channel as well.
Right.
So it's either one. That group is the group call I made. If I added TO into the friends list, it would show up in here. All
Right.
that.
Because like I did one of those for, like on my radio, I have one of those for TO, so I can do a private call to him straight like that over a channel.
Yes, without a group call. Right. But when they say contact here, and that is confusing, I agree with you. This could be a talk group or this can be a private call. This is just a digital contact at that point. It's kind of confusing, their wording. Let's go back to our slides. So digital contacts, that's talk groups or specific radio IDs. And you need to put all these in before you go much further. So if you look back at this and we go to our friends list, I don't have anybody in here at all. And I don't have anybody in my digital contacts, but I do have talk groups. So let me add in another talk group, and I'm going to add just a couple. So Alabama link, because I remember these, 31010. And that is a group call. And there we go. So now I got 2 contacts. So we have contacts, either a talk group or a person. That is our contact. Now, the other thing, and I don't want to get too far into this because I don't want us to run forever, and we're already 40 minutes into this, and we're only on number 3. You can also have receive groups, and Ape mentioned that earlier. Let's take that off. Ape mentioned receive groups earlier. Receive groups, this is one of those things like T.O. was talking about. Hams took DMR and beat it into submission to use for amateur radio. The receive groups, like Ape said, some radios require them, some radios don't. The receive group could be a group of channels that are tied together. So for example, if I have the sheriff's office and the fire department in my DMR radio and they all use DMR, I could have the sheriff's office and the fire department dispatch in a talk group, a receive group rather, together. So it's like a scan function for digital. You can also scan digital, which is really weird. but that's what a receive group does. You could get even weirder with a receive group and have, for example, Hamwise, like
Amway.
America Link, Toads Digital, UK Chat, and Aussie Headbanging, whatever. And so now you have 4 completely not logically interrelated talk groups in a receive group, and the radio will key up on all of those whenever anybody talks. So when those crazy Aussies, are headbanging and drinking Fosters or whatever at 3 a.m. our time, they could be keying up on the radio. It doesn't make sense to have receive groups for most ham channels. It just doesn't, in my opinion. If you find a use for receive groups, good on you. I think all it does is make things more complicated if you put multiple talk groups in one receive group.
But some won't. Some radios won't work. They won't
Correct.
receive without using a receive group, and that's one of the things that I'm always hemming and hawing about cheap DMR radios.
Right. And to get around that, in my mind, what I have always done, whether I'm programming the 6X2, which does not need receive groups,
Right.
or I'm programming my Fang 1801 or some old Redivus that does, I put a receive group with one digital contact. So Toads is a receive group, and Toads has the Toads digital contact inside the receive group, and that's it. And then I move on. That way, the code plug works whether the radio requires receive groups or not. Because if your radio requires receive groups and you don't do receive groups, then you'll never hear anything. So it's just, for me, it's 2 seconds extra to click a button and make a receive group with the same name as the digital contact, the talk group name, and move on. But Ape is absolutely correct. Some radios require them, some radios don't. I just do a 1-to-1. As I'm building the thing out, I do a 1-to-1. So I've got a talk group, a receive group that holds the talk group, and it works. So that's receive groups. Talk groups go inside receive groups. You may or may not need receive groups. I do one talk group to one receive group, and it works fine. That's a channel, basically. And then we get to channels. And this is, oh my God, cat, go away. Jesus Christ on a cracker. So then we get to channels. And channels are a digital contact we've created from step 1 or an analog contact. And that can be a repeater, a simplex frequency, whatever. It doesn't matter. So if we go back to the CPS and we go to channels, all right, move, go.
It's a shame you can't see Jim wrestling the cat right now, folks.
Compressed
There was a
air.
reason for that.
Compressed air. I'm not wrestling him. I just don't want to.
Well, he has to put his pants back on before we.
All right, listen.
Standing
Before
up.
I get a lot of crap about the cat, his best friend, the dog, got put down 2 weeks ago. He's an old cat. She was an old dog. They loved each other in a love that shall not be spoken of. And he has been very weird
Big as
since
the sky.
she died. So he's very, 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 very needy. And she died. All right, Ham Radio Kansas. I hear you. So on channels,
He wishes.
no, because it just causes problems, whichever way. So this is an analog channel, and you set this up just like you'd set up an analog channel in a Baofeng, any analog radio. It's the same thing. If it's a simplex frequency, analog, what your power level is, the bandwidth for the channel, all these features that you may or may not need, tones if you require tones for a repeater. You can have it do APRS on a specific channel. You'll notice that the digital stuff is grayed out. That's because I've told this is an analog channel, so we don't have the options for digital. There's nothing special about the way you put in an analog channel. And all the stuff we've talked about up till now, that is the digital stuff. If you buy a DMR radio like the 6X2 or whatever, Anytone or Redivus or whoever, and you're only going to use it for analog, then you can ignore everything I said before this, go straight to channels and put in the analog channels. You're done. Bob's your uncle. Now, if you do that, you're kind of strange, but I'm not judging. So that is an analog channel. A digital channel is a little different. So again, you set your transmit and receive frequencies, and this could be a repeater, or this could be a hotspot. I went too far. A channel too far.
You always take it too far, Jim.
Always.
I've heard that before.
So here I've set digital. Here is the transmit power. This is a sample config, I think, that came from BTech. So none of this actually is anything I'm using at the moment. But so you set your transmit power. If you're keying up to a hotspot in your house, low power is fine. You don't need turbo power to hit the hotspot. You'll melt the
Son, you want to be pedaled down all the time.
This HCB, old man. This HCB. We're not talking on channel 19.
Only as
here.
much power as needed to make the contact, which is all the power.
Right.
Right. Well,
But, this GA5 or the GA5WB, that's the one that they discontinued because it's the Vero. Is that right? This one?
Yeah.
This wasn't DMR, though, was it?
No, not DMR.
I've got so many damn HTs sitting around here. I can't even remember which ones.
I got a
That's
box
like
full
that's
of
like the
crappy
best
ones.
radio you can get feature wise. Like the cross section of what that radio does is great.
This one you can't get anymore, right?
You can get it as the Vero VR N76 or the BTech UV Pro.
The UV Pro UV too.
X
Yeah.
Pro
I wish they had better names for radio.
Royale with cheese.
Well,
Every
like
so often, I
Anytone
think I understand it, and then they throw another one in there.
Well, the Anytones with the 10-meter export radios, they'll have like the 6666, the 6662, the 666 Pro, the 666 Pro 2, right? So there's like 4 of them.
Oh, don't forget the Pro 2 Plus.
right. And they all look completely different. They all operate completely
Yeah,
different.
and by completely different, like they're not even the same physical dimensions. Same, like it's
Right,
it's 4 different
screen.
radios. It's not
just like,
one radio with 3 different options.
I would think that everything with the same 6666 would be a line of radios that would have similar stuff across the entire line. All right, we're done with that.
So, yeah, I was trying to get it so I could show the slides and we could still see our smiling faces.
Yours
So,
are hard.
anyway, digital contacts. So digital contacts, this is this section here, and there will be a similar section in whatever CPS software you're using. So this is where those digital contacts that we created show up, the talk groups, which is a digital contact. It's just a group
But it's
contact.
not part of the digital contact database download.
Right. The digital contact database is people. The talk groups is
People.
talk groups. So we've got Alabama Link and Toads in here. And that's what goes here is what talk group or digital contact person do I want on this particular channel. And then what radio you're going to use. And this is from step 1 where we put in our DMR ID. Color code and time slot. This depends on the repeater. This depends on your hotspot, although I think most hotspots are generally time slot 2 and color code 1 by default. You can change that on the hotspot if you want, but there's no reason to. It doesn't do you any good.
Well, see,
Mess
where
with
people
that.
get confused on this is that the talk group is in, like, depending upon how you're accessing that talk group, the color code and time slot can be different, right? Because that's
Yes.
infrastructure dependent.
For a
not-
repeater. For a
Yes,
repeater.
100%.
For
So
your
that's what
hotspot, you're
people
always
get
going to
worked
be
up.
talking to the hotspot on TS2, I believe they default to, and color code 1.
Correct.
PyStar and WPSD are the same. This is where you have a receive group if you've made one. So I would have a receive group called Toads with, let me go back and make a receive group real quick.
Here we go.
I know, I hate making receive groups. Receive group call list. And I'm going to call this Toads RX just to differentiate it from Toads, the name. There's the call list member. Okay, we're done. Let's go back to our channel. Go back to number 2. Come on, baby. Again, we're using the Toads group call. And now for our receive group call list, we're using the Toads receive group. This is the thing the BTEC doesn't need. A lot of more newer DMR radios don't use this. Some of them may. I don't know about your particular China brand fish market DMR 7000. I have no idea. You just have to try it. And I just do it because it's not that big of a deal. Encryption. You can't use encryption as a ham. Don't use it. As an FYI, if you're going to play with encryption in a prepper scenario, a lot of the encryption between radios is not the same algorithm. So you can encrypt with 256 blowfish and the other radio only does 128, triple des or something, whatever. The crypto is just a hot mess. So I don't care about it. Encryption.
What if it's an emergency? Can you use encryption if it's an emergency?
You stop right now. You stop
Yes,
right
and
now.
no one will come to your aid because no one can
Because no one can understand you.
No one can
and it's
hear
an
you.
emergency. Let me use my emergency crypto key that I got to type in on the keypad so I can talk to Ape encrypted because it's an emergency. He's out of Miller Lite.
Well, I had a guy who was asking me questions about, hey, well, I want to get a ham radio to use in an emergency after what we saw with the hurricanes. I'm like, that's a fantastic idea. He's like, well, I don't want to get licensed because I don't want to be on the registry.
You got a driver's license, don't
that
you?
you're already on. Yeah.
Well, the thing is
You got
that
a
the
birth
registry-
certificate, don't
there-
you?
Pay
There is
taxes?
no registry, right? There's a license database, but it doesn't mean that you have a registered ham radio that they're going to come knock on your door and confiscate at some point in time. And I was just like,
Right.
so you want to have the ability to contact the government authorities in the event that you get in trouble, but you don't want the government authorities knowing that you have a radio, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. But at the same time, there's other, I guess, non-licensed things that they can use. But the whole term emergency, like for my wife, who's a great lady, but for her, the emergency is that she can't find the remote. You know what I mean? Or the or the Netflix account is locked out or something. You know what I mean? And that you can't just pick up a radio and use it for that.
So someone said they were surprised encryption was an option. The reason is because hams stole DMR from public safety and business. This is not designed for ham use, and all the functions are there. That's why
Speed limit is 55 and your car can do 120.
Right?
The speed
Says
limit's
it
still
can.
there.
Yep. That's an excellent analogy, T.O. Thank you.
Like it is there, Kansas.
So
There ain't no believe.
that's how that works. So your digital contacts and your analog contacts. And again, and I feel a little bad because my slides are kind of mixing these together. Talk groups and digital contacts are both digital oriented contacts you can make. A talk group is a group call. And the way this software is generally using the term digital contact is TO's specific DMR ID. They're both contacts that are digital, and they both would go in here. Now, the other thing that gets people wrapped up, and I don't want this to go on too long. We're already at almost an hour. Once you've got all these in, you need to be able to access this stuff, and you see frequencies here. So let me take that down. So you've got a frequency for a local repeater, an analog repeater, let's say. You've got a simplex frequency. You've got two DMR talk groups, Alabama Link and Toads. And you have Ape's private DMR ID. And
Exclusive.
There's a fee for that, which if you've got to ask, you cannot afford it. So the repeater you're going to talk to on the repeater frequency, and that's always going to be the repeater frequency, and that's an analog contact. The Toads and Alabama Link talk groups obviously are digital, as is TO's and Ape's specific digital contact information, their DMR IDs. So depending on your radio and how it works, you may want to group these in a couple of ways. So the first thing is, do you have one hotspot only? Do you have a hotspot in your vehicle? Do you have a hotspot in your shop? Do you have a hotspot in your shack? One in your truck, whatever. So I do have a hotspot out in my shop. I have one over here, and I have one in my car. They're all on different frequencies. So Alabama Link, if I want to talk to it here in my house, is on frequency A. If I'm out in the shop, it's on frequency B. And if I'm in my truck, it's on frequency C.
I say yes, Cooley. That's why I was talking about those other contacts earlier, like in your friends list.
You can look them up, Cooley. You can actually go to radioid.net and put in their call sign or their name and look them up that way as well. You can cross-reference. You don't have to get them to tell you their secret code. You can go look it up.
But you'll see it generally depending upon your display parameters when you talk to them anyway, right? Like if you're in the same group.
Right. When Ape keys up on DMR, to me, it says Big Hammerhead instead of the Smoking Ape.
All right.
So you need to group that stuff together, and you may have different frequencies with the same talk groups associated with it. So if I'm in my truck, I'm on a different frequency than I'm on in my house or in my shop. And you can put each of these on their own twirl of the knob if you want to, but that's where we get into something called zones. And what a zone does is it takes these channels and it lets you group them together in a way that makes sense. So, for example, here in my area, there's 5 or 6 repeaters. And 4 of them are analog and 1 is DMR. So I have all my analog stuff in a zone together. So I have VHF simplex, UHF simplex. The local repeaters are all in the analog group. I have the fire department frequency in the analog group. So if our zone. So anything, when I switch my zones on the radio to analog and I twirl the knob now, all I'm going to see is the channels that I have put in the analog zone. So I won't see Toad's Digital. I won't see Alabama Link. I won't see Ape's DMR, TO's DMR, so on and so forth. All I'm going to see is analog channels that are in the analog zone. Zones are super important to being able to use these damn radios, because otherwise you end up with this giant Russian list of digital contacts and analog contacts and repeaters, all of this stuff in one giant list, and it's a huge pain in the ass to twirl your knob to go through all that crap to find the one thing you're looking for. So that's what zones do for you. They let you put them together in a logical fashion. It's just a collection of channels that, in your mind, go together in some way. So, read the slides, Chris. Read the slides.
Just turn the volume off and just read the slides.
So, on my setup, for example, what I have is analog, which is repeaters and simplex frequencies. Then I have the house hotspot frequency and all the digital stuff that I want to be able to key up through DMR on the house hotspot. Because all them house hotspot frequencies in this channel list here are exactly the same. And again, this is not mine, but I might have 5 or 6 digital contacts on 433.7 that is my house hotspot. Toad's Digital, Alabama Link, Ape's personal radio, TO's personal radio. And I put those in the zone, house hotspot. I've got the same ones for my truck, and they're in the truck zone because that hotspot frequency is different. So the zones just collect them together. For digital contacts, it really makes more sense, and then the shop hotspot, so on and so forth. So it's just a collection of channels that either share a common thing, like analog, or a common frequency. Go ahead.
It's like a bank, right? The zone is the same thing as an old school bank. Like
Yeah,
a bank of
pretty
memories.
much. Pretty
So
much,
like I
yeah.
have one for like when I'm at home, when I'm at work, right? And then because geographically there's a little bit of a difference between the repeaters that I can hit. But in mine, I
Right.
have a mix of analog repeaters and digital repeaters because I don't discriminate. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm fine with either one. But
And
It's
you
just
could
not how
actually, yeah, you could do that. You could have repeaters. You could put all your DMR, you could put your DMR repeater in with your analog repeaters if that's how you want to do it. The radio will switch. It doesn't matter. It's just
Right.
however you want to organize it in your head. And I've heard a lot of people make comments on old videos. I don't want to use zones. That makes it more complicated.
So don't.
Don't roll that knob through 700 contacts. Go with God, my son. It doesn't matter. That's just the way I do it because in my head, it makes sense to group analog stuff all together, digital truck stuff for the truck hotspot, house stuff for the house hotspot, and shop stuff for the shop hotspot. It's all the same contacts in every one. In my example, Ape, TO, Toads, and Alabama Link are in 3 different zones, just different hotspots.
This is how I always depict this. This is what I did for myself when I was getting into DMR, and it's the way that I would always share it with folks. But you have your talk groups that you enter in. You have your color codes that are default in your radio and your time slots. All of these feed into RX groups and channels, right? And your channels has, I don't use RX groups, so it's over to the side. Your channel has your name, your channel number, your name, talk group, color code, time slot, TX frequency, and all set frequency. Then your channel goes into a zone or a scan list, right? Because some radios make a distinction between the 2 different ones. So your zone can have multiple scan lists, or your scan list can be made up of channels from multiple zones. But this is just the diagram that I use. I don't know if it makes it any easier for folks or not, but.
And I suggest that all of you go look at Ape's videos and TO's videos and mine, because there's nuggets,
Mine's
I'm
the
sure,
best.
in all of these. Steve's card thing was actually a pretty good paradigm, or analogy, rather. So that's what zones are. Zones are just groupings of channels. Again, the way I did it, I have 2 letters on all them slides, so that must be really important stuff. AA, 5AA. Okay, it was late when I was doing these
God,
slides.
who did this?
Yeah, no Miller Lights were
Channels are-
involved. Just
His
Channels are important.
Geritol was kicking in.
I'm telling you, I needed a hit of Geritol. So the way that I have it listed on the slides is the way I just explained. That's how I separate it. Again, you don't have to do that. If you want one giant monolithic list, then you can do that. I just think it makes it a whole lot easier to find what you're looking for. Because if I'm out and about, and Ape mentioned geography as well. So I have Huntsville repeaters in their own zone. I have Dayton repeaters in their own zone. I have Orlando repeaters in their own zone. So when I'm in Orlando, I'm not scrolling through a bunch of digital crap or stuff I can't use in Orlando. I just go to the Orlando zone, and then all the Orlando specific stuff is in the Orlando zone. And it just is a whole lot easier to do that way. But that separation, you don't have to do the separation. That's just how I do it, because it makes sense for me to zone it out so I'm not looking at a giant list. You could also do a scan list. I have not played with scan lists
Scandalous.
on a DMR radio because, honestly, I got scanners that are way hella better than the scanner in a DMR radio.
So when I use scan lists, when I first got into the what's that?
Have you played with those?
Yeah, so I was using scan lists because I was scanning the same repeater, and I was making multiple channels for every talk group on the repeater. But that was before I learned the joys of promiscuous mode, where I could just have one channel and I could listen to every talk group on the repeater anyway, right?
Right.
But what I would do is I would just scan because the way that the recommended way to set up DMR is that you can only hear one talk group per channel, right? That's the out of the box configuration. Maybe 2 talk.
Yep.
And so what I was doing is I was creating a channel for every talk group on the repeater, adding all those to a scan list, and then that way I could scan the repeater, and it would stop on any talk group that was being active.
Yeah, and that's kind of what receive groups will do as well.
Right.
If you have receive groups turned on with multiple digitals in them, it is going to monitor all of those, and then depending on your radio,
you might have to change to transmit, right? Because your transmit, because you set your digital contact
Yep.
for the channel is set to a single one.
Yep.
So
And most of the radios now, so if you have a receive group with America Link and Toads and UK Chat, whatever, in one receive group, and you hear something on UK Chat and you want to get involved in that, most of the radios have a key sequence you can press that will temporarily lock you to that specific talk group. I think it's
right.
I think it's pound on the 6X2. I don't remember because I never do it. It's weird.
I don't remember. There was a whole bunch of like key shortcuts where you could do like pound 99 and it would disconnect you from the talk group, or there's just
Only
tons
if you
of
can be heard.
Right.
stuff. Yeah.
Now, Ape makes a good point there, and so does T.O. If you are on a talk group like America Link, which can be a complete yak fest at times, especially during the day when all the retirees are awake, they just never shut up. And if you want to change talk groups, it gets kind of hard. So, the easiest way I found to do that is go into your hotspot and tell the hotspot to disconnect, because the hotspot will disconnect the call. The radio kind of has to have access to the hotspot over the air to make the disconnect, I believe. And you will have limited success trying to shut off the gab fest if you're trying to do that. People will talk about disconnecting. Let's talk about repeaters real quick. And this is not just DMR specific, I don't believe, but it's more prevalent in DMR. A lot of repeater owners will lock their repeaters to specific talk groups. So you can't change the local DMR repeater to America Link, for example, because they don't want their repeater tied up all day, because people might use the repeater in an emergency or something. So
they'll have it so you can change it, but it'll default back.
It'll also change back. Yeah, but I think that's also dependent on how much talking is going on, isn't it?
Well, see, a lot of these guys will set them up and be like, "This is awesome! I got my repeater, bro. It's going to be so cool." And like back in the day, they were putting them all on TAC 310 because that was like the cool place to hang out.
Right.
And they were burning their repeaters up because people would talk. Basically, people would kerchunk nonstop on TAC 310 just so they could connect and listen to it. And like I remember in the afternoon, like when I guess it was like 4 o'clock East Coast all the way up to, I guess it's like 6 o'clock West Coast. The TAC 310 was nothing but kerchunking because everybody was leaving work and going boot boot, keying up so they could listen to it. And then they started really cracking down on that on Brandmeister. So do you remember when everybody would talk on that one? And then they're like,
that was before my time.
They started kicking everybody out if you would dare have more than two contacts with the same person back and forth on 310.
Yeah,
they're like you. It was so crazy because they're like, come and use our 310 where everybody's talking and making contacts and having a great old time. And then so many people did it. They were like, no, we're kicking you out.
The other thing, and this is probably going to be a little bit controversial, maybe for some of you, is I don't log my digital contacts.
How dare?
I don't.
Well,
Don't
like
send me a
people
QSL card because we talked on America Link one day 3 years ago.
I only log POTA. Sorry.
People would call CQDX on TAC 310 back then. It was awesome.
Yeah. Now, Tim Stat made a great point here, and it's a little beyond the scope of what we were talking about, but if you have a duplex hotspot, which you can use, I have one, then you can disconnect with your radio fairly easily because the radio can hit the hotspot. If you got a hotspot, just web into the hotspot and change it. That'll always work. Or take the antenna off the radio, go to another room, turn it on, change it to another channel, put the antenna on, come back.
You guys don't log UHF and VHF contacts, right?
No.
It depends. Like I said, only for POTA.
Yeah, I did 2 meter POTA and I logged them.
Well, I ain't logging a repeater contact.
Right.
I think that's different though. But you're right. So if you're driving down the road and somebody's on 5.2 and you talk,
there ain't no ham paper in 5.2 login, son.
That's right. Paul is going to log our Ham Shack hotline contact.
Do it, Paul, right now. Do it live.
They only ever call on the show. I'm not going to answer it, so don't call Paul.
I'm of the
Rude. Rude.
That you shouldn't send cards for FTA contacts.
I know.
I
I
get
feel
that all the
really
time.
bad. I know. Yeah.
I believe it's ham radio, so everybody simmer down. But I just don't.
Dun, dun, dun.
I don't see the card necessary on that one. But
I don't send QSL cards at all, so I'm a complete jackass. But
In more ways than one, yeah.
yes, I am. And like you, I'm going to own it, you cheap bastard. So
Right. Yeah.
well, I kind of am in that boat too, Jim. I'm not sure I'm a fan of the cards, but that's just me.
I'm like, what am I supposed to do with these?
What's
I
the
don't want to
stamp
have
cost now? 52
Hey,
cent? I mean,
One of these days when you actually get a call sign and you get a QSL card, you
I'm gonna be
might
so
think
enamored.
differently.
You'd be like, I'm a real boy now.
yeah, I need to send cards out to people.
Honey,
So-
I can't help you with the remote right now.
All right.
Got an emergency.
Hold up there, ham radio hen house. Just a second. So anyway, they
I like that.
You like
I
that?
do too.
That's copyright Coffee and Ham Radios 2024. You guys can use that, but so they may lock the repeaters, and like Ape mentioned, they will also have timers on there. So you may or may not be able to connect to the talk group you want on a specific repeater. The other thing a lot of people will say, and I think this is more old school, but if you're on a repeater and you can change the talk group and you make your contact, you should probably disconnect the talk group from the repeater after you're done. That's kind of a courtesy thing,
It's your fault the repeater
Supposedly.
blew up.
right?
It's a bro move.
It's a bro move. Now, if you're using a hotspot, and I've had people ask me this, if you're using your hotspot, you don't have to disconnect from your hotspot. It's your hotspot. You want to keep it on America Link all day? Rock on, son. That's exactly right. Now, somebody mentioned the quality of DMR voice a second ago in the chat, and I don't remember who it was, and I'm not going to call him out anyway. Son,
would if you
buy
remembered.
buy a better radio. I mean,
That's 100% what it is. It's the cheap radios.
I officially can't tell a bit of difference between my $1,700 9700 sitting up here doing D-Star, my FT5D, and my B-Tech. It's just buy a decent radio. Now my DMR, my Baofeng 1801, you son of a bitch.
Right, you get a $29 DMR radio, and people are like,
Right.
I wonder what my audio never sounds good on this thing. I
Right.
just can't-
It's gonna
You know,
sound
Check your mic gain settings. Hey, Paul, how's it going?
That must have been Paul. Anyway, check your mic gain. And if you got a crappy speaker that came from Joe's House of Fish and Chinese speakers, then you're going to get the quality that you paid for.
Right.
In my opinion, with my ear, not with scientific equipment, there isn't a hell of a lot of difference between any of the three common digital modes. Honestly, it's a matter of bandwidth, which is the same, and it's a matter of the quality of the radio and the quality of the internet connection. Now, if you're trying to talk to somebody on DMR and they keep saying you sound like you're bubbling coffee through a filter, it's probably your internet. And your gas station internet or your gas station Pi is having a problem. And that's the thing about digital. It does require internet to go away.
Through the internet. Yeah.
Through the internet. To go
had
to
gas
a
station.
non-local system. And
I had
somebody
gas
before you
station
guys,
breakfast this morning. It was
is
fantastic.
it telling you it's
Is that
time
why
to
you're
go?
cranky?
No, I'm happy about that. It was like a bagel.
Because
It
it's
had
a day that ends in Y is cranky.
a hash brown. It had a sausage. It had a bacon. It had eggs. It had cheese.
Oh, bacon.
It had everything on that thing.
Did it have an afternoon nap?
It's going to.
I cooked
See,
bacon
you and I
and
grew
eggs
up in
this morning.
Baltimore. Did it have Scrapple on it?
It did not. It did not.
man,
There
I
was no
miss
Scrapple
Scrapple.
around here.
I
I have
miss
not
But,
tried Scrapple. I got to one day. I'll probably regret it. But
Don't go in with high expectations. It's not that kind of meat.
I don't know.
So, what was I going to say? Somebody's going to ask sooner or later, well, you got to have internet. It's not real radio. Actually, that is not true. You can simplex radio to radio with DMR or Fusion, and I think D-Star as well. It doesn't require the internet.
Correct.
So what if it has internet?
Like not real radio.
Here's the thing: like I've been watching all these channels that had nothing to do with any participation of saving anybody in the hurricanes, but they're talking how important ham radio is for the hurricane relief and all this stuff. And they're talking about how great it is to use the Vera WinLink or whatever it's called. But isn't that internet?
Yes. Well, you can
No.
do link
No.
over straight HF. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but by the time you get it back to the email, like you know what I'm saying, isn't
To get
If
it
you're,
to
if
someone
you're
else,
emailing, if I'm emailing you at your call sign that you don't have, then it's RF to RF. If I'm emailing you at your Gmail address, which you also don't have, then it's RF to
Right.
Gmail, which requires
which
internet.
would be
Yeah.
internet. And so that's what and I didn't
No
hear
reason not to
anybody
be
say-
intermodal. I don't
I
understand
didn't hear-
why
it's not
hams are
it's not
so.
you.
Yeah, I don't understand why
Right.
hams are so. I guess it's on the back side of the license. I got rid of that paper. I don't see it anymore. But the part where we just get to complain about everything,
Right.
period.
Stay off my lawn.
So you can do point to point ver, but you can do point to point DMR too.
Is that Jeff?
Yes.
Ham Radio Kansas. Is that Jeff? Is that you out there? KSOJD. I think it is.
I don't know.
Because I think I've called him that before.
You called him Jeff?
Yeah. No, I called him Ham Radio.
It is.
Kansas.
It is. It is Kansas.
Yeah.
He's saying that that's him.
I thought I detected his snark the moment he entered the room. Anyway, so
smell
that is DMR code plugs. And the key takeaway to doing the code plugs is to do them in order. Honestly, save the slides that I showed, and we'll put them, I'll put these slides in the show notes. But it's just follow that order. And it's going to vary from CPS to CPS. And that's something you have to figure out on your own. But you got to tell the radio who it is. That's the first step. And then just follow that list in that order. Understand receive groups, whether you need them or not. Try it without them. If it doesn't work, you need a receive group. And like I said, I just do it one-to-one. I put each digital contact, Toads receive group, Alabama link receive group. And that's how I roll with it. So that kind of setup works no matter whether it's a 6X2 or Honest Joe's House of Fish and
Nice.
DMR radios. So, yeah, I agree, LC. That's exactly right. But that's it. That's
it. That's all you
That's
got.
it.
that's it.
That's it, and that's all.
I mean, hell, an hour and 17 minutes. Well, a little less because there was some
There's some hen house in the
Little
beginning.
pre-show
Yeah.
coffee
We got
and ham
Wild Bill
hen
in
house.
here.
Bill.
That's not really a good idea for
Bill's
a
a
pilot,
rebel.
Bill. You
Bill's a
can't read
rebel.
or follow orders. I'm scared.
So
I did.
next
Go ahead, Chuck.
I was gonna put something out there. Is next weekend is Pacificon. If you guys are around, I'm planning on being there. I don't know. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
It's
Dennis
next
and I
week,
are
Pacific.
supposed. It's next weekend, and Dennis and I are planning to do the on Sunday the swap meet. And if I do the swap meet, I will have some of our antennas and stuff there, plus
Nice.
a couple other things maybe. But I've got some other stuff going on that weekend, and I'd like to stream it, but it's way too late for us. That's the problem.
Well, are you going to be on the show?
Do it
'Cause
anyway.
I'm looking at the schedule and I don't see.
Well,
The
see
HR
message
department's going to have a
request.
problem. This is going to go on your permanent record.
I don't look that far ahead. I'm just now looking at next week.
Chuck's looking at this evening. What's for dinner?
Yeah, I went to a wedding last night, had a good time, so that was fun. But little brown liquor, just very little though. Had
The
to
only
drive.
reason a wedding would be fun.
Did you eat your banana before going to bed, Chuck?
I didn't, and I'm still safe. I don't know why.
Not enough brown liquor.
Yeah, I didn't have. Well, sometimes it's been just like one, and it's I do a little cramping up nowadays.
Next Saturday we have Red Summit RF coming on to talk about.
I guess he's not
And I
going to
make-
Pacificon.
No, he's too far away. Nobody. Me and Dennis are the
Where
only
is Red at?
YouTube
Is he
guys
in
that
California?
show
Arizona.
Arizona.
But I might stream it. I might play with it. I don't know. It'll be just walking around showing you this show, and I don't really see a whole lot of. There's not going to be a whole lot of different stuff as far as other than it's in a different place. So I don't know how many interviews I'll do. Maybe a
What
few.
time? What
Maybe
time does
Ellicraft
it start?
will announce
9 your
something.
time, Chuck.
Yeah, I think
So
it
that'd be
opens
like
at 8.
11
I think it
in
opens
God's
at
time.
8. So 8, 9, 10. So it'll be 10 o'clock.
Are you
We're-
spending the night up
we'd
there?
just be
Like,
getting
are
done.
you and Dennis?
No,
gonna
I'm,
get a
I'm not
room?
that far. I'm
gonna
not
shack
that
up.
far away. I think Dennis does. He stays at the hotel there where
Dennis
it's at.
is the little spoon, Chuck. That how that works.
So you could sleep with Dennis.
Well, I
Doesn't
mean,
mean
you
you
have
need
to
to spend a night with him, but you could stay there, right?
Right. And I could still do the show, so I think I did last year. Just get there late. So just putting it out there. I'll probably be around at least 1 or 2 of the days. So if you do, I mean, you save shipping, and shipping's $6 to $10 depending on where you live. Something like that.
Yeah, you'll easily save that in gas.
T.O.,
Well,
what are we
if
doing
they're
on
already
Nuggets
there, though.
Monday night?
If they're already
More
gonna be there, it doesn't matter.
TNC. I didn't get a chance to make that cable yet. I might have some time this weekend. I'm not 100% sure.
Crimp and solder.
Crimp
Right.
and solder, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
I got to make
James,
a cable and
I
get
do
prepared for tomorrow.
a bottle of water and a banana usually before I go to bed.
Yeah. We finally found a TNC that might work. Now we got to get a cable that might work.
Right.
So what do you do? What is with the banana at bedtime? Is that to give you
Potassium, it
something?
helps replenish your
Potassium, it
electrolytes.
helps. It
Richie's
doesn't-
radio room.
you know-
Welcome.
Thanks, Richie.
You know what really works if you are cramping up? Pickle juice is really good, which is basically it's the vinegar I think in the pickle juice. I've had it
Acetic
actually
acid.
like immediately
Acetic
work.
acid,
but not every time.
A lot of sodium. There's going to be a ton
Yeah.
of salt for the brine in the pickles, which is an electrolyte. Yeah.
It's funny, my
Doesn't
buddy used
sodium
to.
dehydrate you further?
I was going to say, don't you need more water to go with that?
Well, you got to add water.
You're
to
increasing
it, yeah.
your electrolytes. The whole thing is you're dehydrated and the electrolyte
These two old fuckers.
replenishment.
They're like, put a little witch hazel behind your ear.
Yeah,
No,
you,
I'm not.
You laugh
That-
now,
that
homie.
might be Chuck.
You laugh now.
It's like
I ain't putting
Well,
no
you have to
witch
actually
hazel behind
exert.
my ear.
You actually have to
The
exert
spirits of
yourself
miter.
to have that happen.
Yeah.
So most of the time.
Right.
you sound like
We've seen you boys at Hamfests.
I mean, there was the witch I
Moving
was
from pork
married
chop
to.
sandwich to
Exactly.
deep fried cheese.
Yeah. Where I really had it was dirt bike riding.
Good
'cause
idea. Good idea.
I
HK.
always have water with
They
me,
know.
but I don't drink enough of it. That's the problem. And then
See,
partying later.
HK's got it right. So like we suffer on nuggets on Monday night, so you don't have to.
Right.
how many TNCs is there in the stack now? I mean, it's got to be.
We're almost up on number 6.
I have
got
seen
another
you
one
guys
that's on the
Talk about
way.
me and the manual tuners, but I mean, it's just,
Have you guys found one that works yet?
I have
no.
one that may work, but there's no screen on it. I need to test that today.
Maybe you guys should.
And
just
then
buy
Jim
a new
actually
one
bought one.
that actually works. Oh, okay. So now
there
you're
was
going
the
to have
in
one that might
Huntsville that I
work.
bought that didn't work, and Hollywood is refurbishing that for himself because I gave it to him.
Tom,
I
welcome.
have this one that T.O. sent me
Tom,
that he
welcome.
got at a ham fest that the screen doesn't work, but it may come on. We just haven't tested that. And then I ordered
Hollywood's
the parts
Chrome.
for that one that Don put in the chat yesterday or Thursday. So
Joe,
I've
do you
got the
have
board
Tom's
and the
info?
parts coming for that to build one.
I don't.
I don't know what
Tom,
the
are you
hell
on
we're
the
actually going to
Discord?
do with this, but
It would be nice to make a contact. That's like the end goal of
Right.
anything in ham radio is to do
Right.
radio stuff with it, but who knows? And then, so Jim actually ordered the parts to build a new TNC. I have the parts to build a completely
Did he?
different. You've got the Nino. Is it the Nino TNC or what is it, Jim?
Tarpon. T-A-R-P-N.
Tarpon. That sounds like it's.
But I think
guys
it's the
those guys are
Nino
pretty good.
made by Tarpon. Yeah.
Maybe that's
And then
it.
I've got the Nucleo TNC by MobiLink
Yeah.
D. So
Yeah.
So I have the TNC that was made by, I think it was Tarpon made it, and then MFJ bought it, and they discontinued it. It's the one that goes on the pie hat, and then you use Zaster and Direwolf with it.
Really?
Yeah, I
Why
set
d-
it up and did everything and used
Chuck's
it.
a new member
I did
too. Welcome,
APRS
Chuck.
with it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Chuck
Jim.
See if
Miller,
I can
thank
find
you.
it. I
Make
don't.
sure
I
you
mean,
contact on Discord. So.
finding it's going to be like impossible. But
yeah, I don't even have that much space, and I still can't find stuff here.
Right.
Which you have everything's boxed though.
It is, and labeled too, and organized and sorted. I just have so much stuff. It's like, do I have one of those? I'll just buy one.
I want to know, is that Ham Shack sign secured back there? Do you have to, like, take
Oh
all
no,
that
I have to
crap
tear
down
all
when
this
you
down
move?
every week. It's a pain in the butt.
Yeah. I was like, I could see crap flying all over the place as you start
Don't you?
pulling
Where's
that.
you know what you need? Your bungee nets. Have you seen the bungee?
Yeah,
like for
I have.
the
Yep.
little squares.
A couple of hammocks back
Put some
there to hold
books
some
up there.
HTs.
Right.
but,
Yeah, so we're going to be
why-
staying stationary for 2 months. It's going to be nice to get stuff done and
Wow.
set up.
So why do you want that TNC box though, as opposed to using software or something else? Like what is?
Because it's something to play with.
It's
absolutely
nothing other than,
zero
hey,
reason.
This is just a box that's cool to push buttons
I bought
on.
the one at Huntsville because it was marked $40, and I was helping a little widow woman by buying it for $40. And
Listen,
I asked,
I'm 100%.
I asked
okay with
Mimi,
that.
"Does this
and
work?" And she said, "My husband passed away, and it was all
I'll
his
take it.
stuff. And as far as I
Jim,
know,
Jim
it
shed a
works."
tear.
And I'm like,
Only one.
Stop! Please
Talk.
stop talking here. Can I give you more money? I'll take this thing.
He does the same
probably
thing
the
on
back.
street corners. You know, when
Tell
they
him
stop you
I'm dead.
when they're walking down between the cars. He does the same thing there.
Yeah, he was probably radioing in her hearing aid from across the room. There's a sucker.
Baofeng.
Tell him the dead guy story. That'll get him every time.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% okay.
I just never played
because
with one, and then
I wanted
T.O.
to make
got
sure I
into
wasn't
it,
missing out on something.
Well, we don't know yet. That's the hard part. Like I have no
We
idea
can't-
if you're missing out because we're still
freaking
missing out
hell.
on it too.
Right? It might turn out the sun comes out.
It's not
from
like
behind
you've
the
missed
clouds as soon
anything
as you
yet,
get it
Abe.
working.
I mean, it's like people who get all excited about Wind Lincoln Vera AC and all that stuff. Okay,
Yeah, I agree.
I could send email from my cell phone.
Yeah,
Good.
we're not making fun of those people. I mean, everybody's
No.
got their own thing.
I mean,
that they
Jim
do.
is.
Like,
But that's the way
when
Jim
people
is.
get all worked up over APRS.
rolls.
And I got my packet to do 5 skips. That's fantastic. But it's
Yeah.
just not what I'm. It's just not what I'm
Hops.
into.
Right.
Yeah, whatever.
Hops, skips, whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I bought the TNC because I wanted to play with one. I've never messed with
I don't,
one.
I don't blame you. I don't,
The
I don't, I
packet
don't
thing
blame you
is
at
Abe-
all.
old.
Those of us that have friends like to talk to them every so often.
Right.
With over the TNC.
To prove we could
Right.
use ancient technology. Right? Like the cavemen did back in the 80s.
We don't blame you, but we don't get you either.
I'm gonna see if I can find mine. Now that
Well, you have to have
Now
a call
you're-
sign
now
to use
you're
it. I guess you
interested.
could use K-toads.
dude, you don't have to. Oh, you just use it on 11 meters. And
He's there all the
fine
time.
on there.
Oh my God, you were going to hell, son. It's just no doubt.
Well, we did a stream the other day, and I was telling it was with the antenna whisperer, and it totally went. He got by him. I was talking about setting up an 11-meter antenna in my office. He didn't like what
I was
He's
like,
a
what are you
nice
talking about in
guy.
your office?
Yeah, he's a nice guy, but I wonder if after the show, if he's like, "What the hell?" You know what I mean? Because I said that, and then I also one of my flat
But you
Earth
did that.
tirades.
You did do that, didn't you? You're going to use that tape,
Yeah.
the aluminum tape.
Cooley, I don't actually know.
right?
It'll do email. You can do keyboard to keyboard chat. You can do a whole bunch of stuff with it.
Text.
And remember, you took a test that gave you information on using Pactor, and Jim and I have machines that can do fully licensed Pactor.
Right.
Take
Woo.
that.
So you can do Pactor WinLink, right?
Probably.
I don't know. I don't remember if Pactor is a protocol or a transport layer. I don't really remember.
Yeah, I don't know much about it, but I think the original Pactor was they're saying yes, but I don't know if they're saying yes to me or not.
Nobody says yes to you.
Yeah. I mean,
too
like
much work.
now I want to get me one of them ready boxes, but I honestly don't know what I would.
Oh, it'll do RIDI too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what the OS
Does
call
APRS?
them, right? Like all TNCs is a ready box.
I guess. All right, I'm going to hit the button. Before I go, I want to point out that you can get antennas at coffeeandhamradios.com. All 4 models are in stock, handcrafted kits
By you.
by Chuck. Chuck makes the kits in a hermetically sealed Ziploc bag, so they arrive at your
In fact, I might
doorstep
make-
ready for you to
I
put
may
together.
make a few more.
For your protection.
I might make some kits
That's
today.
right,
Who
sealed
knows?
for your protection.
Right.
And you can get some outstanding coffee, and it is. I've taste tested it at hamradios.coffee. That's all that stuff that's been going across in the Chiron below during the show. Thank you for being here, y'all. And if you guys have DMR questions, hit me up on the Discord or shoot me an email, and I'll be glad to try and
Late
help you
night
out with
call is fine,
No.
with Jim.
He'll be glad to
Hashtag
confuse
hotline.
you some more.
it. Yeah, call me on Ham Shack Hotline.
Ham Shack Hotline with Jim talking DMR.
I'll do a live
Nice.
stream. We do a live stream late at night on Ham Shack Hotline.
Yeah.
You got to
would be
get
funny.
Hamshack Hotline wired into your mixer so you can get
puts
the
the
audio
hot-
through the stream.
I think I
Jim
can
puts
do
the
that.
hot
Yeah.
in Ham Shack Hotline.
That's right. What are you wearing? It sounds hideous. All right, I'm hitting the button.
Khakis.
Thanks, you guys.
Later, guys.
Later,
Have a good
everybody.
evening,
Thanks for
day,
joining.
Whatever. And